It was absolutely within Enzo Maresca's rights to drop Sterling. If a player isn't performing and is severely overpaid, then there is no reason for the club to have any loyalty to him. I think the owners have massively contradicted themselves. They came in saying this was a process, a project. Well, that wasn't the case because you sacked Potter. The manager and the club, they've made their decision. We want you out. Off you pop. Bye-bye. I mean, you saw the City game. There's not a lot of optimism for that. So nobody knows what to expect. I mean, even if you look at the way we set up against City, it was nothing like in pre-season. So many questions to be answered. This is pretty basic stuff. I think there's been a massive overreaction in terms of criticism towards the manager. If Maresca doesn't like Sterling, then he doesn't have to play him. He doesn't have to include him in his plans. And everybody can see how big Chelsea's squad is. We've got 40 plus players. A lot of those players aren't good enough. A lot of them are overpaid, even though our wages have still massively gone down since Clearlake have taken over. Ultimately, Sterling is a player that majority of Chelsea fans, 99% of Chelsea fans, don't like. I don't think he puts in enough effort. I don't think he has enough output. I think his wages are astronomical. The contract that we gave him was a complete... I mean, it was a disaster giving Sterling a 5-year deal on 350 grand a week. And look, we've learnt our mistakes, but now we've got to pay for it because he can take two decisions. I think Chelsea have already made their stance quite clear because they've said openly, we support our manager. And that means that Sterling's probably not going to play for us again. I mean, look, he featured in pre-season. I actually think he was quite good. And that's why it's a little bit surprising. But if that's what Maresca wants to do, I'm all for it. And I think we need to get our wage bill down anyway. It's not just him. It's Lukaku as well. Ben Chilwell. We've said that he can go. I don't have an issue with it. Because then actually you can look at this club and say, what are we going to do with the money to reinvest? So if you get 350 grand off the books with Sterling, similar with Lukaku, 200 grand with Chilwell, are you going to give Victor Osimhen a good deal and persuade him to come to us? I don't think it's a bad decision at all. I think, honestly, it's the best thing for the club at this moment in time. People can say all they want about experience, Sterling being a winner. How did that help us over the past 2 seasons? He was one of our worst players in his first year. He improved ever so slightly under Pochettino, but he was still extremely inconsistent, underwhelming. And yeah, as far as I'm concerned, good riddance. I don't think it matters how popular a player is. If a player isn't performing and is severely overpaid, then there is no reason for the club to have any loyalty to him. If this was Thiago Silva or another player, we're having a different conversation, right? If Thiago Silva's still got a few years left on his deal, we all know that we try and keep him. We know what he offers. We know what he brings. We can talk about the dressing room all you want. You've got to perform on the pitch. And also, you've got to connect with the fan base as well, right? I mean, Trevor Chalobah is an example we use. Similar to Sterling at the moment, actually. He's been isolated by the club, only for longer. And fans are outraged by that, rightly so. You won't see the same response with Sterling because he hasn't done anything to... He's not done anything to get loyalty from the fan base. Everything that Sterling has done is... For me, it's quite selfish, to be honest with you. He doesn't pick the right pass. He doesn't get into the right positions. He's not got the finishing touch. He's picking up 350 grand a week. What more can you ask for as a player? You are literally being facilitated as the main man in the squad. The whole reason he left Man City was because he wanted to be the main man. We gave him that opportunity. He fumbled the bag. It's as simple as that. He got given chance after chance after chance. Didn't matter if it was Tuchel, if it was Potter, if it was Lampard, Pochettino. They all played him. Even Maresca played him in pre-season. So actually, you can't say he wasn't given a chance. He was. Even though we think he might have played well, Maresca's looking at it and maybe he's completely unsatisfied. Maybe he thinks, you know what, this guy does not have the characteristics to play in my system and my team. And judging from what I've already seen over the 2 years he's been at Chelsea, I don't think there's anything to say that Sterling's going to perform this season. I think that the Sterling situation is very simple. And I think it all rests on the player now. The manager and the club, they've made their decision. We want you out. Off you pop. Bye-bye. Simple as that. and he can go down the route of looking for a new club, taking a significant pay cut, trying to stay in the Premier League, or maybe going abroad as well, because we know other teams can't necessarily pay as much. Or you can go the Saudi route, where they might actually match the wages, if not increase it. That has been on the table before. I don't think that's a bad situation for Sterling at this point in his career. Let's be honest, he's not getting better every single season for the past 4 or 5 years. He's got worse. That's not going to change anytime soon. You're coming into your 30s. You're not far away. So I think this is a smart move for Sterling to look for a different option in his career and understand that, look, he's not part of the club's plans. He's certainly not a part of Maresca's plans. The fans don't like him. Let's be honest. I'm not trying to be disrespectful here. I just say it for how I see it. You've got to work with the players that you can. And if you're working with 40 players, how are you supposed to dedicate time to each of those players to improve them and show that you have faith in them? You want to give those players confidence. It's impossible with 40 plus players. It's difficult with 30, to be quite frank. I still think he's stretched. And, Ugachukwu was one of the dark horses in pre-season. He's gone on loan to Southampton. I think that's a good move for him. There's a lot of question marks in terms of the system. How's Jackson going to adapt? I think he was one of the best improved players under Pochettino. I don't think he necessarily fits into the system, to be totally honest with you. We saw Nkunku play on the left against Man City. Why would you change something that works so well? He's great in the centre of the pitch, whether that's as a 10 or a striker, ideally a 10. So there's so many different question marks. I mean, Chilwell's one player, but I think that's also down to the club. I mean, this all goes down to the wages as well. Our average wage structure is about 60 grand a week. It was 200 grand a week under Abramovich, and Ben Chilwell was on 200,000 at the moment. I don't think that's a coincidence. This is happening to Sterling. This is happening to Chilwell. Maybe it is also the case that this is systematic and tactical, but I certainly think the club are communicating with Maresca, and they are working together in that sense. Since Clear Lake have taken over, we haven't finished in the Champions League. We haven't won a trophy. We haven't upgraded on what we had under Abramovich, which is very difficult to do. Right? Let's not act like it was an easy task. Whoever came in was going to struggle to live up to Abramovich. But the mistake they made was stripping what we had as quickly as they did. The owners, quite frankly, have their sights set on one thing, and that's developing young players and continuing to go with that model. And ideally, picking out a few gems. Now, Cole Palmer was a great buy. I mean, £40 million. Nobody can complain about that business. But what about Badiashile? What about Fofana, who we signed for over 80 million and was injured the whole season? What about Disasi, who's really not a good centre-back? So there's all these different things that come into it. And you go, well, you may have stripped us of some of the dead weight, because there are players that we didn't need. But you've just brought in mediocre players for the most part. And then you've got Cole Palmer, who is a gem, looking around him saying, who's with me? Who's going to actually live up to this Chelsea level? I mean, that's why I signed for Chelsea. I'm wearing this Champions League shirt. I was there in Porto when we beat Man City. And then a couple years later, I'm watching us lose 4-0 away at the Etihad. And this is the reality for us now. I think Chelsea fans have to accept this is a transitional season. I think the owners have massively contradicted themselves. They came in saying this was a process, a project. Well, that wasn't the case because you sacked Potter. All right, let's get it right the second time with Pochettino. Okay, now what? He wants to keep 2 players. He wants to keep Gallagher and Chalobah. He doesn't even want you to spend the money. He's literally saying, just let me keep the players I have. I mean, that's fair. That's totally fair. They've been 2 of the best players since you've come in. You were struggling conceding goals. Chalobah comes in, you start winning football matches. That's a coincidence. Gallagher was arguably a player of the season. I mean, these are understandable points. And absolutely, if I was the owner, I wouldn't even question it, right? You're the manager. Manage. But they want to manage the manager. I mean, if you look at the profile of players we need under this system with Maresca, you're playing possession-based football with a high line, and you want to have one of the slowest defenders I've ever seen. Disasi's not going to cut it in this system. And actually, I don't think his distribution's anything special either. So Disasi's another one. I mean, the list goes on. We've got all these goalkeepers. I'd love to see Robert Sanchez leave. I have no idea why Sanchez is playing. I don't get it. Why did we sign like 6 goalkeepers? You spent almost 80 million on goalkeepers, if I'm not wrong. You bought in Jorgensen, who were like, oh, this is definitely going to be the number one. And he hasn't even played. I mean, in terms of Premier League. So he's coming into this squad probably under the impression that he's going to be replacing Robert Sanchez. And now he's sitting on the bench. I don't get it. I don't understand it at all. I think Robert Sanchez makes great saves. His distribution is just ridiculous, though. The second goal we conceded against City was his fault. He rushed. He put pressure on Caicedo, I think it was, when he received the ball. And of course we concede. You know, if you're a defender, you want your goalkeeper to have composure and just a little bit of common sense. And Robert Sanchez lacks that. So those are a few players. But to be honest with you, mate, I could go on forever. But I do think it will get better. But what is better? Is better top 4 or is better winning the league? Who knows? In a few years, we might finish 8th and I might go, thank God we didn't get relegated. Because that is the kind of form I have seen since Clear Lake have come in. We had the bounce back under Pochettino and the chance to build something really special. I really think that we had momentum. I really believe that. And we sacked him. That's your fault, Clear Lake. That's your fault. You did that. You've got to live with the consequences. You've given Maresca a 5-year contract. You've got to be patient. And I think as fans, we do as well. I don't believe that it's right to be booing players on the pitch in the first game of the season. I actually think it's incredibly unhelpful. I mean, there's a video of Maresca reacting to fans in the East Stand who are complaining and booing. And you can see him going like, what's going on? And I don't blame him. This is a brand new manager coming in, trying to implement his system. This is a completely different style to what we saw under Mauricio Pochettino. The structure is immense. It is much more efficient in that way. There's no free roaming like there was under Poch. You have to play a certain way as a team, otherwise this won't work. That doesn't click straight away. Right, you might have done well at Leicester, but guess what? It wasn't great the whole time. They didn't finish the season strong. And we're going to have some real dips. I said after the City game, you think this is bad. Trust me, there is much worse to come. December's never been a good time for Chelsea. I don't think it's getting any better anytime soon. So, as fans, we just need to appreciate that there's been some massive mistakes, but we can't control it. We've just got to support the players on the pitch, the manager. That's what we can control. Let's make life easier for them. It's not their fault that the owners have been clueless. It's not their fault that the signing structure and everything around them is carnage. So let's try and make life easier, not harder.